I was left a dilapidated home in a village by my grandmother as an inheritance, while my brother received a 3-bedroom flat in the capital. I was expelled from my home after my spouse referred to me as a failure. I visited the village, and upon entering the residence, I was taken aback. However, before we proceed, kindly indicate the country from which you are viewing this video in the comments. Take pleasure. The tension in the air was so palpable that it could be felt. Katya's chest tightened as she felt it expanding with each pulsation. The notary's office was muggy and reeked of old paper and a musty odor, as if only the ghosts of the past remained. The lawyer, a slender man in a formal suit, cleared his throat, adjusted his spectacles, and commenced reading the will of Elena Petrovna, their grandmother. Zach, Katya's older brother, was lounging in his chair with a smug expression, sitting beside her. He had always been their grandmother's favorite, a successful merchant residing in the capital. Katya, on the other hand, appeared to be a mere shadow in his presence, a librarian who was silent and demure. She consistently felt undervalued, as if her existence were simply a backdrop to her brother's vivacious life. The lawyer monotonously intoned the address of the apartment, declaring, "I bequeath to my grandson Zach Sergeyevich," as if conveying a verdict. Zach raised his eyebrow in triumph, casting a brief, almost contemptuous gaze at Katya. She endeavored to maintain her composure, despite the fact that she was internally raging. She was aware that her grandmother adored Zach, but she still aspired to some degree of justice. Then the following statement occurred, "And the house, situated in the village of Zarecha, along with all its outbuildings and land, I bequeath to my granddaughter Katya Sergeya." The blood drained from Katya's visage. "I am delighted." She had scarcely recollected the ancient, dilapidated house, as she had only visited it as a child. This must be an error, a misinterpretation. What is the appropriate course of action for a property that is in a state of disrepair? Zach erupted in laughter. "Katya, at least you have something. It was unwarranted to anticipate anything of value from Grandma. What are you planning to do with that waste? Is it necessary to chop firewood?" Katya maintained her silence as she was unable to articulate her thoughts. She felt humiliated and insulted as resentment strangled her like a snake. What was the reason for her grandmother's actions? Did she truly believe that Katya was so unworthy that she merited nothing more than an old home in a secluded village? Immediately following the reading of the will, all events transpired rapidly. Zach, who was filled with self-satisfaction, hastily exited, flinging the debris over his shoulder. "Remember to sell it, or the taxes will consume you." The documents and the keys to the home were presented to Katya by the council. She proceeded to depart the office in a state of stupor. Igor, her spouse, was awaiting her outside. His demeanor was bleak and irritated. So what transpired? He inquired without even attempting to extend a greeting. Katya informed him of the will. Igor's displeasure deepened as he listened. He erupted upon her completion, asking, "Is there a residence in the village? Katya, are you being sincere? Would you be able to perform any beneficial tasks for a change? You are perpetually producing issues, and residence in the capital, that is a genuine opportunity, and you are simply unfortunate. You are a complete failure. You received some garbage." Zach's derision was not as profound as Igor's remarks. She had consistently endeavored to be a supportive wife, but he never valued her, consistently criticizing her for her inadequacies and insufficient income. "Dear Igor," she attempted to defend herself. However, he interrupted her. "That is sufficient. I am weary of your inadequacy. Please gather your belongings and depart. I have exhausted myself." Katya experienced the dissolution of her universe. She was unaccompanied. Her sole possession was the keys to an antiquated residence situated in a distant village. She had no financial resources or assistance. She refrained from shedding tears. She was determined not to expose her vulnerability to him. Katya vacated the flat that she and Igor had jointly rented after packing her possessions. She was uncertain as to where to go or what to do. She was consumed by a single thought. She needed to escape from this betrayal and deception as quickly as possible. She purchased a bus ticket to Zarecha without giving it much consideration. She was indifferent to the fate that awaited her in that God-forsaken village. She merely desired to flee, to conceal herself, and to begin anew. The bus rattled over potholes as gray landscapes whizzed by outside, making the voyage lengthy and taxing. Katya gazed out the window in an effort to divert her attention from her menacing thoughts. She recalled her grandmother's gentle demeanor and her compassionate gaze. It is possible that there was something in that ancient home that would assist her in comprehending herself and in determining her course of action. Zarachi was approaching twilight when the bus arrived. Silence and desolation were the responses of the village to her arrival. The dwellings were crooked, their paint was flaking, and it appeared as though time had halted in this location. Katya exited the vehicle and examined the surroundings. She observed the ancient home in the distance, which was encircled by an overgrown garden. It appeared bleak and unwelcoming, as if it had been worn and abandoned by all. Katya trudged towards the home, dragging her baggage. She experienced a sense of isolation and uncertainty, and her pulse beat with a palpable sense of anxiety. What surprises did this antiquated residence have in store for her? Would she be able to derive any significance from her existence in this location? From the exterior, she gradually circled the residence. It appeared to be a neglected and forgotten apparition of the past, with an overgrown yard, sagging shutters, and flaking paint. Decay was evident in every aspect. She anticipated the interior to be equally desolate. However, she was taken aback by the house's cleanliness and orderliness, as if someone had been diligently sustaining it in spite of its apparent abandonment. The house did not appear to be neglected. Rather, it appeared to be anticipating its opportunity. The atmosphere of the room was characterized by the aroma of dust and aged wood rather than moisture. However, the furniture was well maintained and durable. The walls were adorned with yellowed photographs that framed the features of individuals Katya had never met. She sensed the history of this family, her family, observing her from the depths of the past. Katya observed a modest storage closet in the house's farthest corner as she traversed the rooms. The door was securely closed, nearly indistinguishable from the wall. She attempted to open it, but it refused to stir. The creak of old hinges reverberated throughout the home, causing Katya to recoil, and it required considerable effort to remove the rusted lock. The chamber behind the door was not merely a closet. It was brimming with volumes. Volumes of varying sizes and hues were arranged on shelves that extended from floor to ceiling. Some were bound in leather with gold engraving, while others were enclosed in plain paper covers. The room was so ingeniously concealed that it could be easily mistaken for an ordinary pantry. Despite the absence of windows, small vents were present to ensure ventilation, thereby preventing moisture accumulation. Katya was taken aback by the spectacle as she stood at the threshold. She was unaware that her grandmother possessed a library, much less one of this magnitude. She had consistently imagined her grandmother as a modest villager who was preoccupied with domestic responsibilities. However, this library conveyed a different message, a fervor for knowledge, intelligence, and education. Stepping inside, she ran her hand along the spines. The smoothness of paper and the roughness of aged leather were both felt by her fingertips. Katya was transported to a world of knowledge and discovery by the intoxicating fragrance of ancient volumes. Although she had never been an ardent reader, she was overcome with an overwhelming desire to discover the contents concealed beneath these covers in this room. Some of the publications were written in Russian, while others were in foreign languages. Katya recognized French and German from her school days, and was taken aback by the discovery of numerous volumes in Latin and ancient Greek. She retrieved a leather-bound volume and opened it. The text was clear and legible, despite the yellowing of the pages due to age. It was a historical document that was published in the 15th century. Katya spent hours in the library, perusing the volumes and contemplating the manner in which her grandmother had accumulated such a vast collection. She had a notion that this library was more than a mere collection of books. It was a component of her heritage, a key to comprehending her family and herself. Her grandmother had concealed it exclusively for her. The home was further explored by Katya, who was eager to acquire additional information regarding the library. The basement was unexpectedly spacious and dry, given its age. The stairs creaked as she descended, and she gazed around. She observed an object concealed beneath an antiquated drape in a recess. She approached the fabric with curiosity and proceeded to draw it aside. An antiquated metal safe was situated beneath it. The safe was both substantial and intimidating, featuring a combination lock. Katya attempted to open it, but she was unable to do so due to her lack of knowledge regarding the contents or the potential code. She perceived the safe as an additional puzzle that required her to resolve. She was then struck by a notion. Her grandmother's little peculiarity was that she consistently remembered the anniversaries of all of her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Katya resolved to experiment with her own birth date. She entered the numbers and heard a clack. The safe was opened. Inside were old letters, photographs, documents, and journals, all of which were carefully organized and bound with a ribbon. Katya's pulse beat rapidly. She was aware that she had discovered something significant, something that had the potential to transform her life. She initiated the process with the correspondence. Katya acquired knowledge regarding her true position within the family, that of the spiritual heir, through her grandmother's remarks. Her grandmother clarified the reason Zach was awarded the flat. He was estranged from the family and did not appreciate its value. The documents verified that certain texts were of cultural and monetary significance. The archives contained photographs of Katya as a young girl with her grandmother, capturing moments of intimacy, trust, and affection. For the first time in a long time, Katya's emotions were not a result of resentment, but rather of realization. Katya unfolded the initial sheet of yellowed paper with quivering hands. She was struck by the scent of her grandmother's age, which caused a sensation of discomfort in her bosom. The handwriting was recognizable. It was clean and exhibited a slight rightward inclination. From her infancy, she recalled her grandmother instructing her on the art of letter writing in a thick-lined journal. "Greetings, my darling Olena, my cherished granddaughter. I am already in a superior world if you are reading this letter, and you are likely inquiring as to why the outcome was as it was. What was the reason for Zach receiving the spacious flat and you receiving the ancient home in a remote village?" Katya was paralyzed, as if she had been struck by electricity. Her grandmother appeared to comprehend her emotions, as she was aware of her disappointment and anguish. She suppressed her tears, intent on fully comprehending each phrase. "I assure you that the decision was not a simple one. I contemplated for an extended period of time the most equitable approach to ensuring a future for both of you. However, I came to the realization that fairness is relative and that true inheritance is not monetary or material wealth. Rather, it is a connection to one's origins, history, and memory." Zach had consistently demonstrated a lack of commitment to familial values, according to her grandmother. He was exclusively concerned with material prosperity, career advancement, and success in the urban environment. Elena Petrovna was of the opinion that the flat in the capital would provide him with the necessary impetus to accomplish his objectives. She anticipated that he would likely sell it. However, this was his decision and his course of action. "However, you, Elena," her grandmother continued, "are distinct. You have always been more in tune with the earth, nature, and history. You experienced a sense of connection to the past, to our ancestors. Do you recall the time we spent together reading antiquated books? The manner in which I recounted tales about our family and the individuals who resided in this location prior to us? I observed in you the spark, the affection for what is ours, that is capable of preserving and enhancing our legacy." The mass in her pharynx was ingested by Katya. She did recall those evenings when her grandmother would read her fairy tales and stories from archaic texts while seated in a rocking chair by the fireplace. She remembered the gentle rustle of pages, the warmth of her grandmother's palms, and the scent of old paper. She experienced a sense of security during those instances. Her grandmother continued by elucidating that the Zarech house was not merely an antiquated structure in need of maintenance. Their family's history and origins were symbolized by it. Her forebears had resided within its confines. They were born and perished, loved and suffered in this location. The house was the repository of their memory, vitality, and energy. Elena Petrovna wrote, "The library you discovered is both my pride and my sorrow. My entire existence, I have meticulously collected and preserved these volumes, with the hope that they will be acquired by an individual who can recognize their true worth. I am confident that you are capable of doing so, Olenka. It will be possible for you to comprehend their significance by sensing their essence. Her grandmother provided a comprehensive explanation of the locations where documents substantiating the book's value could be located in the subsequent letter. These documents included ancient catalogs, expert appraisals, and letters from renowned bibliophiles and historians. She also cautioned Katya to seek professional assistance in appraising and selling the volumes as there were potential obstacles. Katya examined the documents. She discovered ancient wills, deeds, and invoices of sale among the yellowed pages. One individual mentioned that certain volumes had belonged to a prominent noble family that owned these properties prior to the revolution. However, an additional document disclosed that Emperor Alexander II had personally donated numerous volumes to the library. Katya gradually comprehended the extent of her inheritance. A genuine treasure trove of immense cultural and historical value, this was not merely a collection of ancient books. It was now hers. However, the photographs had the most profound impact on her. She discovered an abundance of photographs of herself as a young girl with her grandmother, Elena Petrovna, in an antiquated album. They were present, gathering mushrooms and berries while walking through the forest, fishing by the river, baking pies in the kitchen while joking and conversing. In one photograph, Katya observed herself at approximately 5 years of age, seated on her grandmother's knee and attentively listening to her as she read a fairy tale. Her eyes were filled with boundless love and trust, and her face was awash in astonishment and wonderment. Her grandmother's countenance was characterized by tenderness and care. Katya experienced an emotional breakdown at that precise moment. She was unable to suppress her emotions for an extended period of time. She washed away the resentment, disappointment, and insecurity from her essence as they streamed down her cheekbones, hot and copious. These were cries of realization, not despondency, acknowledging that she was not alone, that she had a foundation, a family, a grandmother who cherished her and had faith in her. She recognized that her grandmother had not only bequeathed her a house and a library, but also her affection, wisdom, and faith. She had granted her access to her own heart and soul. Katya blotted away her tears and re-examined the photographs. She now observed not merely images, but a reflection of her own narrative, her own destiny. She was aware that her home was in this tranquil village, in this ancient residence. She would discover herself in this location. In this location, she would discover purpose in her life. She would be content in this location. Katya made a resolute decision. She would not sell the home. She was overcome with a powerful and unwavering conviction that overcame her apprehensions and apprehensions. She would remain in Zarecha, revitalize the aged walls, and restore the residence to its former splendor. Not for financial gain, not as an act of retribution against her sibling. However, she did so for herself, for the young girl in the yellowed photographs who adhered to her cherished grandmother with such confidence. Her initial action was to locate a restorer. Initially suspicious of her, the residents gradually warmed up to her as they recognized her sincere desire to revitalize the abandoned home. A craftsman from a neighboring village was recommended by an elderly woman named Agafia, whose residence was the closest to Katya's. She extolled his golden palms. He also employs a soulful approach to antiques. Ivan was a man of few words, but he was well versed in his profession. He shook his head after examining the home. A substantial amount of labor is required. However, the structure of the residence is robust. It will endure for an extended period of time. Katya breathed an exhalation of relief. They reached an agreement regarding the price and timeline, and he committed to commencing work within the next week. Katya proceeded to evaluate the library. She made the decision to consult with experts, as she was aware that she was unable to evaluate the texts independently. She discovered a number of antique bookshops in Moscow online and sent them photographs of the most intriguing volumes. The response was unexpectedly prompt. A shop expressed interest and offered to send an expert to assess the collection in person. 2 days later, the expert, a young man in spectacles who identified himself as Kier, arrived. He meticulously investigated the library, perusing the volumes and recording his observations in a notebook. Katya's pulse was racing as she observed him. Kier finally raised his head and beamed. He stated, "You possess an invaluable asset here." A few of these publications are distinctive. Katya scarcely managed to suppress a scream. For instance, Kier pointed to an antiquated leather-bound book adorned with a crest. It is exceedingly uncommon in this circumstance. What is its potential value? Katya had the audacity to inquire. Kier took a moment to contemplate. It is difficult to determine the precise amount. However, I would estimate that it would be no less than a 3-bedroom flat in the capital, he replied, gazing directly at her. Katya's pulse beat rapidly. A single book. What was the total number of additional items in the library? She was overcome with astonishment and exhilaration upon realizing the value of her inheritance. Kier extended an offer to assist with the appraisal and sale of the books, providing information about private collectors who are prepared to pay top dollar for uncommon editions and auctions. Katya expressed her gratitude to him, but she requested additional time to contemplate her options. She was uncertain as to whether to sell the library in its entirety, progressively, or convert the residence into a museum. Katya resolved to correspond with Uncle Petya, the son of her grandmother's acquaintance, who was referenced in one of the letters, on the same day. She discovered his telephone number in an antiquated address book that she had retrieved from the safe. Uncle Petya was overjoyed to receive correspondence from her. He recalled Katya as a young child and her grandmother, Elena Petrovna. He stated, "I have always been aware that that house was unique. Your grandmother was a woman of great wisdom. She consistently declared, 'Memory is the most valuable asset, not money.'" Katya apprised Uncle Petya of the library, the letters, and her intentions to renovate the residence. He listened attentively and extended his assistance. He stated, "I am consistently prepared to provide guidance, despite the fact that I reside in a distant location. I have the ability to introduce you to the appropriate individuals and assist you in navigating the documentation." Katya expressed her appreciation for Uncle Petya's assistance. She believed that she was not alone in this endeavor, that she had an ally who shared her passion for family history. Her telephone rung that evening. Zach was the individual in question. "Hello, Katya," she detected his voice. "What is the situation like in the middle of nowhere?" Katya replied in a composed manner, "Everything is fine, Zach. What is the condition of your flat?" Zach replied evasively, "It is satisfactory. Please listen. I was contemplating the possibility that we may have become agitated over the inheritance without justification. What if we exchanged? I will provide you with the flat, and you will provide me with the home." Katya sneered. "Zach, I have also been contemplating a great deal," she stated, "and I have come to the conclusion that I am content with my current circumstances. I am fond of the residence." Zach, however, objected that there was nothing there. "It is a complete shambles." Katya responded that it possesses an asset that surpasses that of any flat: memory. The past. "I am not willing to exchange that for anything." Silence was suspended. Zach evidently did not anticipate that response. He eventually murmured, "Well, suit yourself. Do not return to me in tears later, as I have already forewarned you." Katya replied with firmness, "I will not," and then terminated the conversation. She gazed out the window. The night had arrived. Cozy and tranquil, the residence was. Whimsical shadows were cast on the walls as the fireplace crackled with the sound of logs. Katya experienced an unfamiliar novel sensation, inner liberation, self-assurance. She takes pride in her family and herself. She no longer experienced feelings of deprivation, sadness, or abandonment. She was the master of her destiny, her property, her inheritance, and she was confident that she could manage whatever lied ahead. Katya beamed for the first time in an extended period, sincerely, directly from the heart. She stood, walked to the window, and gazed at the celestial sky. She felt as though she could see her grandmother Elena Petrovna's smile among the stars, and that smile provided her with the fortitude to continue. Katya returned to the fireplace, removed an antiquated book, and opened it to the initial page. She initiated the process of reading. She delved further into the world of the past with each line, a world that belonged to her family and that she was only now beginning to comprehend and appreciate. She developed an increasing interest in art, literature, and history. She came to the realization that her grandmother had not only left her a house and a library, but also a key to self-discovery, a fundamental component of self-discovery. Katya was prepared to employ that key. Katya intended to remain in Zarikia, restore the residence, investigate the library, acquire a comprehensive understanding of her family. And she would be content. This was her decision. She was certain that it was the correct choice, as it was created with her emotions. Katya closed the book, turned off the light, and retired to bed. She experienced a rapid and profound slumber. In her visions, her grandmother smiled and said, "I have always had faith in you, Olenka. You are capable of accomplishing anything." And Katya was convinced. She was capable of accomplishing anything, as she now had a purpose. Furthermore, that objective was more significant than any other. Katya awoke the following morning with a sense of lightness and pleasure. The fresh village air enveloped her as she emerged from the building. The sun shined vividly. Birds sang with joy. She experienced a sense of renewal and beauty in the environment. Katya grinned. She was exceedingly pleased. And this was only the beginning.